Hey friend, in this video, I am teaching you how to paint these 10 simple, loose watercolor flowers. We are breaking these down into some really basic shapes so that anybody can paint them and they're in their most basic form. I know you're gonna love this video, so let's get started.
What 10 are they, Jenna?
We're gonna be painting lavender, black-eyed Susan, a rose, cherry blossom, tulip, anemone, poppy, zinnia, delphinium, and a side-facing sunflower. It's gonna be lit. It's gonna be real nice. It's gonna be really cool. Hey, nice. Just, if you got bored, just skip through and get to the good part. Let's start painting now. Okay, so for this entire piece, I am going to be only using my size 6 Princeton Heritage 4050 round brush. As you guys know, I love these brushes. This size 6 will do the job for all 10 of these flowers that I'll be painting. So whatever brush you have, but this is the brush that I'll be using. We have it linked below. The first flower I'm going to show you a little demonstration of is lavender, and I'm going to load up with some water. And lavender, I have ultramarine violet in my palette, and it's just a little too vibrant or not as muted and soft as I want it to be of a lavender color. So I'm going to grab ultramarine violet and mix it in with this like kind of blue gray that I have already in a mixing well. If you want to mix up that blue gray, I basically just use Prussian blue with a touch of Mars black. Or you can do Prussian blue with a touch of an orange color that you might have, because that'll make it smokier. I might even add some cobalt blue to it. Make it a bit smokier and less vibrant or vibrant purple. More of a blue-gray purple. All right, so that's the color that I have and that I want for this. And a lavender flower, all we're gonna do for our strokes here is basically using our brush on its side. So we have a slanted hold about 35 degrees away from the paper with our brush. And it's just one motion for the stroke. So all I'm gonna be doing is laying down the belly of my brush and then lifting it right off for a little teardrop shape. So that's all I'm going to be doing for all of my lavender bits. And I'm just going to point my brush to where the stem would be for all of them. And some of these petals on the lavender flower are smaller than others. Some of them are lighter than others. So I might wash off some of that pigment for some lighter petals. I might add a little purple for some of these strokes, so it's not all the same hue. It's also not all the same value, which is the lightness and darkness of the color. Some of these petals are on the stem, so the stem will go behind it, and some of them are on the side. So I'm just kind of dancing around where I know that stem will go. All I'm doing is laying my brush down. I'm not doing anything else to complicate this, and it's so simple, so simple, but so very beautiful. Looks just like lavender. Maybe some bigger petals towards the base. And then from here, I'm just going to grab some yellow green. So this is lemon yellow deep, and I mixed some sap green on it already. For a yellow green, I might grab a little bit more of that sap green. And then come up here for my stem, also having a slant hold, and I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way to the top, like so, and just go through the middle of these petals. But don't go right across some of these that are some of these petals that are in the middle of the lavender, because those would be on top of the stem or facing towards you. Then I can have, I'm not left-handed. Then I can have a leaf coming out of this stem here. If you don't know how to paint leaves, we have an entire series on leaves, so make sure you check that out. We'll link it here in this video. But I'm just going pressure and release of pressure. For our lavender. Our next flower is going to be a black-eyed Susan. And for that, I am going to start with the center of the flower and paint the petals after. But basically, we're going to be doing a very similar stroke to what we did with the lavender, but it's going to be extended for our petals. So the center of a black-eyed Susan is black. Obviously, there's different undertones in black. There's purple undertones, brown undertones, etc. But for a really simple broken down flower like this, we're just going to grab Mars Black. And we are basically going to be creating this dome shape with spots. So I'm going to use a slanted hold with my brush and just spot or place some dots on my paper in a dome shape like that. So it looks like a little hat or a dome. And then from here, I'm going to wash my brush off so I don't have any more black on my brush. And I am going to pull out some yellow petals for my black-eyed Susan. This black-eyed Susan is on its side, so some of them, I mean, obviously the perspective is going to be different per flower, but this one is on its side, so the petals are going to be pulling away from the center. And so we're going to point our brush back at the center for each petal. So I'm going to start on the right over here with my first petal. I'm pointing my brush to the center, that little dome. And I, just like the lavender, am going to place my brush down, but instead of lifting right off, I'm going to drag it first and then lift off. And then I'm going to have a petal here. And let's maybe make it slightly more orange. So I'm just going to add a little bit of cadmium orange to my yellow. So not all of my petals are the same hue. So point, press, lift off. Maybe a lighter value for this one, so I'm washing it off. Point, press, lift off. Maybe make that one thicker. Point, press. Point, press. Maybe in between there. And then we can have these little peaks of petals that are behind the stamen area or the bulb of the flower. That are kind of just like little half moons behind here. So we're just seeing the curve of the petal going behind the rest of the flower. Like that. If you don't like that black blending into the yellow, I think it's a fun texture, but you can grab or dry your brush off completely and then soak it up so it's not as intense. Or a dry paper towel, whatever you want. But I think it's a cool look. So then I'm gonna grab sap green, touch of lemon yellow deep, and pull the stem out of where that bulb is. Really just depends on the flower of what direction I'm pulling or pushing the stem, whatever feels comfortable for you. And then grabbing a little more sap green for a leaf. Like that. There you go, Black-Eyed Susan. The next flower we're gonna do is a watercolor rose. I'm gonna load up with Scarlet Lake and a touch of Opera Rose. You can use whatever rose-esque color you would like. But to simplify a loose watercolor rose, we're gonna start with a little 6 shape, so literally painting a 6 With our brush, I'm gonna have a pretty much almost vertical hold. So instead of being lower to the paper like this and using the side or belly of my brush, I'm gonna use the tip of my brush, and with little to no pressure, I am going to paint in a 6. So I've got a little loop down here with the tail at the top, just like a 6. Then I'm gonna go behind where that curve sticks out of the 6 for another C curve. Then go behind that C curve for another one. I might lighten my color, so grab a little water and wash off the excess. And then go behind that C curve. And make your C curves longer and fatter as you get further away from the center of the rose. And you're keeping these C curves really tightly tight next to each other. So there's not too much white space between each petal. And I'm starting to use the belly of my brush a lot more to make these petals fatter. And you can bring it on its side like this to give it some bumps or texture. So, but go behind each C curve to start your next petal. Like so, till you get that kind of bigger circular shape. And then I might go back in with darker pigment and add some shadow to some of these petals just to make it stand out a little bit. And there you have it. Frame it with some dark green leaves. I'm going to grab sap green with a touch of Mars Black. You can do this in a separate mixing well if mixing on top of color stresses you out. It does come off. And I'm going to use a slanted hold with my brush, press, release, and then press, release. Press, release, press, release, press, release. There you go. Let's make this leaf a little fatter. Little basic, simple rose. So for our next flower, we're going to paint a cherry blossom. So a cherry blossom is going to have like a light blush, or some of them anyway, there's different varieties, but it's going to have like a light blush petal. So I'm using opera rose mixed with yellow ochre and a touch of lemon yellow deep. And I'm gonna add a lot of water to this. I can also just load up with it on my brush and then release some of that pigment in my water to lighten it. And then this is a 5-petal usually flower, and so it's a star-shaped flower. So I'm going to place my petals like I would the arms of a star. So kind of envision or imagine a star shape and follow that shape for each of your petals. So I'm going to start at the top for my first petal, and I'm having like a 75-degree angle on my brush away from the paper. So it's not a complete vertical hold. It's not super low to the paper either. But it's up a little bit higher. And I'm gonna press to where the center of the flower would be. I'm gonna point, to the center of the flower. Press and curve in. And then do the same thing on the other side. Point, press, and curve in. So it's kind of this upside down teardrop shape. Then I'm gonna do that for all of my petals. For this cherry blossom, maybe make some of them a little bit darker than others, just like we do for all of our petals, for all of our flowers. So now we've got our side arms. Point, press, loop in. Point, press, curve in. So these bottom ones are kind of at an angle. Like so. And then from here, we're basically just going to darken that same color with some burnt umber and black for the stamen area. And I'm just going to place a few dots around the base of these petals. You can do your stamen yellow, you can do it darker like this, totally up to you. But just place some cute little dots there. And if you want to soak up some of that bleed, you can do that with a dry brush or a dry paper towel. I'll leave some of it, but some just got a little bit out of control, so I'm going to help it blend a little bit. There we go. And a tulip is fun to make these really basic. If you're doing like a really big loose floral composition, these are great filler flowers because you can basically do exactly what we did for lavender, kind of combined with cherry blossom. We're gonna point to where the stem would be and create a heart shape with our petals. So point, press, curve in. Maybe grab a little bit more orange for this next petal. Point, press, curve in. And then we're gonna have, so we're creating a heart. Another petal on this side where we're doing the same thing. So point to where the stem is, point, press, curve in. Point, press, curve in. Little, loose, simple tulip. Then we'll grab some sap green and lemon yellow deep. Curve out of where the center of the flower would be. And then our leaf. Press, release. Like that. Cherry blossoms are usually they're on a tree, so we can have our branches kind of burnt umber and Mars black. And then we can have other buds and blossoms on there. Anemone. So an anemone flower, similar in shape to the cherry blossom. I have a great full-length tutorial on a more detailed loose anemone if you want to check it out as well. We'll link to it in this video. But for this one, we are basically going to be doing the same star shape. I am going to use Scarlet Lake. I'm going to load up with Scarlet Lake and then rinse off most of it in my water cup. And do the same strokes we just did for the cherry blossom and for the tulip, but making sure that I'm pointing my brush and my petals back to the center of the flower each time. So I'm gonna start with a petal pointing straight down to where the center of the flower would be. I've got a slanted hold. I'm going to point, press, curve in. Point, press, curve in. Maybe grab a touch more pigment for this next petal. Point, press, curve in. But just really making sure all of my petals point back to the center of the flower. Making sure to shift the hues a little bit per petal so it doesn't all look the same. can do a softer pink one over here. For anemones, since the stamen area of the flower is much darker, it's a dark blue and it has various undertones, but it's a dark blue or black. I'm not going to paint in the stamen until these petals completely dry. So from here, I'm going to move on to my leaves. Anemone leaves are like really scraggly little guys. So we're going to just kind of allude to that shape by putting in these smaller kind of bendy leaves. I'm okay with the green bleeding, but I want to keep that center really clear. All right, so I'm going to wait for that to dry and then paint in the center of those flowers. So let's move on to our next one, which is a poppy, which is very, very similar to these anemones. So I'm just going to switch up the color. Let's do a cadmium orange with a touch of Scarlet Lake. And we will do the same exact approach as the anemones. The stamen is just going to be yellow. So point, press, next petal, point and press. For our poppy. And then we will grab this yellow stamen. So I'm now going to use this lemon yellow deep on my brush for the stamen. Leaving some white space between the yellow so I can see the dots. And then I might also go around those yellow bits with some yellow green just here and there. And then our leaf. Little bulb. Poppies. Our next flower is going to be a zinnia, or zinnia, whatever. But not multiple zinnia. It's going to be a single. So it's just going to have one row of petals, and it's very similar to our black-eyed Susan, except the center or stamen of our flower is going to be yellow with kind of like a reddish purple bulb. So I am going to do opera rose for our petals. There's various colors for zinnias. They come in a lot of different varieties, so make sure to Google and reference a photo of one if you really want to see what they look like. But I might start with a light pink and kind of create these same petals that we used up here, but in a circle shape. So pointing to the center of the flower, pressing down. Then I might go back in while these are still wet and add yellow to the base. Zinnias have this nice gradient on their petals. Just creating a circle. Go back with yellow. have it. And then I'm just gonna do yellow for the center on the outer edges here. So creating a circle of dots, and then a little bit of pink, a little bit of yellow, and some brown for the bulb. And for some leaves. Just point, press, just like we did with our petals. Then our next flower is going to be a stalk of delphinium, or it can be stalk. There's stalk flowers, there's delphinium. They're all relatively similar in shape, and when we deconstruct it into a loose style painting, it's going to be very similar, also similar to lavender up here. So I am going to paint kind of a muted blushy color, or actually let's bring some more purple into this piece. More blue purple. So let's do a cobalt. There's this nice like rich royal blue delphinium. So I'm gonna paint that color delphinium. Maybe mix it with this color I used for the lavender, because it's pretty similar, but I'm just gonna add more cobalt. All right, and to start, I am going to have this flower kind of shooting off over here. We are going to be doing little tiny cherry blossom type flowers. So point, press, but I'm going to make them really small, creating a star shape. Just pressing, just like we did up here with lavender. So there's one little delphinium. Maybe there's a delphinium on its side over here so you can't see the other petals. Little bud. And then switch up the color just a little bit. So I'm just grabbing more purple on the side over here for these next ones and climbing up the stem with these little marks. Make some of your strokes lighter than others, slightly more purple than others. And then you start to taper off. So it starts kind of like a wide cone shape and then tapers off towards the tip with these smaller buds. And some of the buds are just the stem or sepals overlapping the actual flower. So you see just green. So I'm going to grab my yellow-green color for my stem. Start here. Come up into the flower. Bud, bud, bud. And there you have a little delphinium situation. Okay, so our next and final flower, let's see if we can squeeze it like right here, is going to be a sunflower. This is very similar to, or going to look very similar to the zinnia one, except our petals are going to be fatter, so I'm going to apply a lot more pressure on the, on the petals. But we're going to do a side-facing sunflower. So if you want to paint of sunflower from this perspective, just create a wider stamen or bulb area, and then thicker petals and a lot more petals, thicker and shorter petals. But this side-facing one, I think, is a unique perspective and something that will be valuable to know how to do. So we're gonna do burnt umber with a touch of Mars Black for the stamen or bulb of our flower. And we are going to paint a little disc or mound situation for our bulb. And I might kind of add some texture at the top of that bulb so it's not just a perfectly round curve. And then from here, we're going to grab some lemon yellow deep, maybe a touch of yellow ochre with it to make it not so sunshiny yellow. And I'm going to go around this curve, pointing my brush to the curve. So I'm rotating my brush as I go along. And I'm doing the same stroke I did for the zinnias over here, but shorter. So point, press, curve in. And they're kind of like leaf strokes. So I'm going to give it this tip at the end. Point, press, and then just use the tip of my brush to give it that stroke. Point, press. Maybe a little more yellow ochre for this one. Point, press, tip. Making sure all of my petals are pointing back to the center of that bulb. And as I start to come around, so this one had a little more yellow in it, which I love that it's kind of a different hue there. And then as I start to come around, I have these petals that are pointing up and kind of overlapping the base of that bulb. So they're going to come up like this. Try not to touch too much of that bulb area. But you're creating a nice little sunflower on its side. And then maybe we have our stem curving at the top. Some leaves. All right, so now that we're done with all of our flowers, we just need to go back and add the stamen to our anemones. So I'm going to grab some Mars Black and add a circle in the center for the bulb of the flower. And a circle in the center here. And then all I'm going to do is use the tip of my brush to place these dots or the pollen area of the stamen. Around those circles. And then I'm going to add in the stamen just like I would stems. So just using the tip of my brush and with little to no pressure so I can get the thinnest stroke possible, adding little C-curves to these balls. Kind of like little Q-tips. All right, and there you have it. Well, that was fun, right? We painted 10 simple, loose style florals that are just simply some basic strokes. That's all it is. So if you're struggling with it or getting frustrated with any particular flower or stroke within a flower, it's probably because you're overthinking it. So just try to remember that it's all about muscle memory and keeping up that practice so you can develop that muscle memory so that it comes easy to you. But this is the most broken down, simplistic form of doing these 10 flowers. We painted everything from lavender to black-eyed Susan to roses, tulips, you name it. Well, I mean, it was only 10. It wasn't the whole world of flowers. I hope you loved it. Leave a comment below and let me know which one was your favorite to paint. Out of these 10, I actually surprised myself and the sunflower was my favorite to paint. I'm usually super bored with painting sunflowers, but I loved painting this one. It was super fun. So let me know in the comments below which one was your favorite to paint. Like and share this video if you think one of your friends might enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next video.